welcome to my channel. My name is Stacy and I make videos on fashion, styling, and shopping. And today's video is going to be a fashion talk. And I haven't had one of these in a long time because honestly I've just had really nothing to say about fashion. However, I would say that recently I've come across this whole topic about gatekeeping for New York Fashion Week. And yeah, I do have a lot to say about that. I'm not 100% sure where the conversation derived from. Some of this content or some of the what I'm speaking to could be pretty old because I don't recall the dates of when this discussion was being had, but it started to come across my feed about this idea of gatekeeping for Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week specifically, and about how it's not the same as it used to be in the past, and how influencers of today have sort of ruined the experience. Because in the past, you know, especially back when it used to be Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, that used to be what they would consider to be more or less geared towards people who actually worked in the industry. Let me say it one more time. So they're saying that, you know, Fashion Week used to be geared towards people who actually work in the industry. And when they say that, they're speaking to buyers, you know, like if you're a Nordstrom's buyer or Saks or Bergdorf's or whatever. If you work for a Vogue, if you do fashion, writing, if you're a photographer, maybe even a makeup artist, just if you're actually working more or less for a corporate entity, like a Vogue or, you know, a retail organization that sells luxury goods, you know, you belong in that space. So that's the first thing, and I'm going to address that later because that definition to me is very relevant to the conversation. Nowadays you have people who are influencers getting on the front row, they're getting dressed by designers, and people feel like they are declassing the event as a whole. And so people are saying that there needs to be more gatekeeping when it comes down to who's attending these shows, because it's not the same vibe as it was before, because before it was a little bit more exclusive to people who actually worked in the industry. So before we get into that, let's get into influencing and the history of it and sort of how it all started and what it's sort of I would say, morphed into over the past couple of years. Well, first let me give you the definition of an influencer. An influencer is a person who is regarded as an expert within their particular field. So an expert in their field that also has a steady following. People trust their opinions and thus their endorsements carry a considerable amount of weight. There is a growing interest in experts who have a large social influence and presence via social media. So when we talk about influencing in general, I mean, I think that a lot of us know that, okay, if you do have a YouTube page such as this, or if you have a following on Instagram or now TikTok or any other social media medium, that is considered to be influencing. We get that. Influencing also includes, you know, if you are collaborating with a brand and they pay you to post content. Let me say it one more time. They're paying influencers to post content that the brand uses on their social media platforms. So essentially, it's more or less fashion marketing. Influencing has turned into marketing. Even though from an influencer standpoint, you know, we do know that brands will sort of you know, give certain influencers with certain products or whatever to show, so that when they put it on their site, you know, then it's sort of it's more or less like a blitz. So you kind of see it everywhere, so it influences people's desire to even have whatever that particular item is. We know influencing to be that, and that's really, in my opinion, the infancy of influencing in general. It's you know, just being able to you know, gift certain influencers for certain things, and then you see it on their site or their web page or whether it be their blogs, their Instagram, or their YouTube. And so, you know, it helps to influence interest within that particular product. Well, it's sort of morphed into more of a marketing, in my opinion, agency, so to speak. I feel like influencers themselves, especially if you are you know, you have at least 30K and above, you're being paid to create content for brands. So I do believe that we are way past the, well, we're just going to give them this bag and have them, you know, take a photo with it and call it a day. No, brands are actually paying content creators to create content, which is why a lot of influencers don't like the name influencer. They like content creator because they are really creating content, and that's essentially marketing. I mean, I'm a buyer for my organization, and we do work with influencers, and that's a part of our marketing budget. Like, it's marketing, and it's sort of morphed into that. I would even say within a rapid pace, probably since the beginning of COVID. Because COVID, for example, even though people were at that time still, you know, really starting to like, you know, pay influencers for content, I believe that more brands started to really rely on it during COVID, because at that particular time, you know, offices were closed. And so, you know, when you would use an influencer, then they were able to create the content on their own and then send it to them for an approval, and then that would be that. Initially, you know, whenever COVID hit, a lot of influencers thought that, oh, they were going to be impacted negatively because they thought that, oh, you know, influencing in general, you know, a lot of people's budgets are going to be cut, so therefore, like, the budget for the influencing would be cut. But all they did was essentially like reallocate those funds to influencers, because again, a lot of that became a lot cheaper than like doing a commercial, or even I guess like paying for ad space in a Vogue or whatever it might be. And it actually became cheaper, because whereas you probably would be paying, let's just say 50, 60K for a page, and say like Vogue, like maybe even a half page spread in Vogue, you know, you can pay someone like, you know, 5, 10 grand, you know, to create the content that they can actually use on their site. And then on top of that too, you know, it also allows them to be able to cut their marketing budgets. They don't have to have as many like in-house photographers to create that type of content inside, because again, you do have to pay those people to do that. So I do think that overall the industry has just changed, and it's morphed into a situation where they really are dependent on influencers for their marketing content. That being said, let's get back to the whole Fashion Week should be reserved for the people that actually work in fashion. So you're telling me that an influencer or someone who's creating fashion content does not work in the industry? Does that sound dumb? It sounds dumb because it is dumb. Like, they are working in the industry. How are they not working in the industry? They're creating content. I mean, I'm talking about for Dior, for Gucci, for all these brands. I mean, they're creating fashion content that they're using. So how are they not working in the industry? It's so stupid. Not to mention the fact that a lot of these influencers are doing their own collections with like the Amazon, even with Target, you know, naked fashion. Lots of people are having these influencers design collections that they're using on their retail sites. So like, what are you talking about? They definitely are a part of the community. I also saw some people say that, you know, this influx of influencers at Fashion Week brings a more pretentious, I guess, air or culture to that particular event. And I call BS on that, because you're not going to be able to tell me that there was not a level of pretentiousness when it came down to Fashion Week before this influx of influencers attending the shows. Like, I don't believe you, and you need way more people than that. Like, give me a break. Fashion Week in general has always been very exclusive, and it's always been very much gate kept. So there's always been a select amount of people who were allowed into that particular space. So you're not going to tell me that that particular environment did not create an environment of toxicity. It did. So I'm not 100% sure why, you know, certain people want to go back to that, where not as many people are included in that particular space. Well, I have a reason. Well, I actually do have an idea why it's happening, but we're going to get to that later. Let's also talk about the term influencer. When I'm speaking about influencer, I'm really talking about, you know, the one that we traditionally know of, you know, like the people that we watch on YouTube, or the people that we follow on Instagram, etc., etc. However, I mean, when you're talking about like celebrities, music artists, socialites, They are influencers. They were the first influencers. And people had no issues with them people being on the front row, being dressed by designers. They're not in the industry. They don't work in the industry. Now, maybe they can, attend the show and say, hey, I want to get this off of the runway to pull for like this press tour I'm going on. I mean, maybe that does happen, but they don't work in the industry. A lot of these people don't even have their own personal style. They're styled by stylists. So they're not styling themselves most of the time. They don't work in the industry, so why is it okay for them to be there? But the influencers who talk about fashion, who make fashion content on YouTube, Instagram, for themselves, for their audience of hundreds of thousands of people in a lot of cases, and these people also make content for brands. Why is it that those people are not considered to be working in the industry? But you have zero issues with Zendaya or Kim Kardashian or whoever it might be, sitting in front row at these fashion events. Make it make sense. They're the first influencers. It's always been about their following and making sure that their clothes are seen on the right people that's going to see them because they're in the public eye. So now the issue is just the fact that more people have access or have the ability to be able to have access to those spaces because they're able to turn on their camera and upload a video that gets them followings, which will give them access to these spaces. So essentially, you just don't like the fact that a lot of people are going to be able to have the access, to be able to have the influence, to be able to be in those spaces. That's essentially what it boils down to. And let's also be clear. Even if we're talking about influencers in that traditional sense, let's go all the way back to say like the days of like Brian Boyd with his blog. And if you don't know who he is, then I would suggest you do look him up. I think that now he's much bigger than an influencer at this point. Like I think he's like an editor of like a magazine or something like that. But he was probably like the first superstar influencer. He was at shows. And this is like maybe 10, 15 years ago. Like no one had issues with that. So to me, I hate to say it, but I feel like the reason why now people have such an issue with influencers being in these particular shows is because over the course of the past several years, more Black and brown people have showed themselves in that space. And they're flourishing. Let's just call a thing a thing. Y'all don't like the fact that a lot of brown and Black people are starting to show up in those spaces on the front row being dressed by designers. And that was a space that was primarily reserved for white people or a select amount of token Black people. Let's just call a thing a thing. You don't like the fact that the space is now being opened up. You don't like that. You also don't like the fact that, everyone who was going to those shows were like 2, 4, 6. Now you have people who are influencers who were size 14, 16, 18. You don't like that either. You want this space to be exclusive to a certain type of person. And that's really what this is all about. There is no coincidence that over the past couple of years, the Hilo Luxes, the Monroe Steeles, the Yusufs, the Karen Britchick, these women are in these spaces. A lot of times they're on the front row or they're very close up and they are killing Fashion Week, like killing it. They are killing the game. They're all over the fashion spaces, all over websites and people's pages or whatever. They're killing the game. And these are Black people. Black like this, not Black like this. You know what I mean? Like, they're not light-skinned, ambiguous people. These are, I'm Black and that's that. Like, these are Black folks in these spaces killing it. And they don't like it. Now all of a sudden, it's being declassed. There's a correlation. There's definitely a correlation between the two, and you're not going to be able to tell me otherwise. So I do feel like the gatekeeping is ridiculous. I do not think it needs to be gatekept. I think that as society progresses, of course, more people are going to be able to have access. Back in the day, they weren't like the Gucci's and all these other brands. They weren't putting their shows straight on the website. They weren't streaming their shows live like they're doing right now. Like, they're putting all of their posts, the videos or whatever on their social media immediately. So we all have access to their shows immediately like everybody else. And before, that wasn't the case. Only like the buyers or a select few who were at the show were able to be able to get like a preview of what was to come. But that's just not the case anymore. That's not the way we live in the world. When you're trying to appeal to Gen Z, you have to continue to move forward. Why would you not want these spaces to be more accessible? Like anytime that you're trying to gatekeep accessibility, I'm gonna call it out every single time. Every single time. It's some BS. It's definitely laced in white supremacy and even black people, because let me tell you something. A lot of the people that I sought with this particular stance were black. They were not just white people. So I'm like, sometimes I do really wonder if we really don't necessarily want equality. We just really want an equal opportunity to oppress. Like, we just want to be able to do what everyone else is doing. We want to be able to be the token people, to be the select few. We don't want a ton of people who look like us in the room with us. Because there's a certain specific type of black person that's like that. Do not be fooled. Our folks are not skin folks. Let me just tell you that. But anyway, I want to know what your thoughts are on this whole gatekeeping in New York Fashion Week. And you know what? I really want to know what some of my other fellow content creators think about this particular topic. Maybe they would like to make a video or at least chime in the comment section. Southern Chic Shopaholic, Brown Face TV, Be About Town, HB Life, who else? Sneakers and Handbags. I'm going to tag them below. And just let me know your thoughts on this particular topic here. You know, I thought it was really interesting, and I think it's a conversation that we need to, you know, really delve into, because I think it's really important. Because at any time that we're trying to be exclusionary within the fashion community, or any community at all, I think that we need to have a conversation about it, like a kitchen table conversation. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully this will be uploaded today on a Sunday. It is cold here. This is why I have on this sweater, and I forgot to tell you guys what I had on. This is actually from Amazon. And I'm not an AKA, so don't ask me that, but I just like the color combo of it. I love how they have like this little patch here. It was like it was like $36, and there was like a coupon with it, so I ended up paying like maybe $32 or $33, and it came in like a day. I think I saw it on Instagram, and I clicked the link and it took me to Amazon, and it had like this color and another color. I thought it was just really cute. It's very cozy. Yeah, very cheap cardigan. Highly recommend. So anyway, guys, hope you guys are having a good weekend. I will talk to you soon.